Good evening, everybody. Good Samaritan Church family, and whoever else sees this or receives it. Here again, Wednesdays, Walking with the Word. Wanted to talk to you all a little bit about a man that doesn't work, doesn't eat. So we'll just get into it. A little bit behind. I was having trouble stop writing stuff down. So hopefully you all have a fun time receiving this. Second Thessalonians 3 and 10 is where you can find the scripture about a man that doesn't work, doesn't eat. A little bit of context is in Second Thessalonians 3:11, which is the next verse after, it says, "Yet we hear that some of you are leading undisciplined lives and accomplishing nothing but being busybodies." So with that context, we kind of see that this isn't about just physically having a 9 to 5 and doing work, but also it's about a quick self-examination that shows a nice number of us, well, we can see that a nice number of us with a quick self-examination, especially by our size, don't miss many meals. So that's another way of showing that it's not just a physical thing. And as most of us can see, self included, that if we look back on some of our high school photos, we'll see that we're not quite the size that we used to be, and have had to buy a few sizes up over the years. So there again, we're seeing it's not just a physical thing, and it's a little bit more than that. So consider this. When Jesus was young, 12 years old, which is stated in Luke 2 and 42, he told his parents in verse 49, and he said to them, "Why do you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" So even as a young child, Jesus knew what he was supposed to do. Also in John 10:37 and 38, it says, Jesus said as an adult, "If I'm not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I am doing them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works themselves, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father." So now we can see that this isn't a physical thing, but a spiritual thing. We can see that if you aren't trying to be an example of the example, you can't be seeking after God. And we can now see that if you don't work God's work, or if you aren't doing God's work, we can't eat of the fruit of Jesus. We can see that although many years have passed in a lot of people's lives, they still haven't understood the assignment. But Jesus, even at the age of 12, which makes me think, even though he understood the assignment at 12, it makes me think back to Luke 3 and 16, where John said, "But the one who is more powerful than I will come, the straps of whose sandals I'm not worthy to untie." Because even in his adult life of him trying to do what God asked him to do, a 12-year-old already understood the assignment and was already trying to get about doing the assignment. But also, if you don't work, you can't eat of the fruit of Jesus. And how can you eat of the blessings of the Father if you don't eat of the fruit of Jesus? Because grace will only carry us so far in life. And if you don't work, how will you earn your keep, which is your name in the book of life? And if you don't work, how you receive your key to your mansion? Without a key, it's breaking and entering. But in John 14:2 and 3, it states, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you will be also." So God is telling you, Jesus is telling you, if you can't be after me, it's going to be kind of hard to be after God. And if you can't be after me or God, it's going to be kind of hard to be where me and God are. So there again, if you don't work, how are you going to receive these things? And also, if you don't work and you don't eat of the fruit of Jesus, you surely can't eat of the key or find the place even with GPS, because Jesus said also in verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So there again, if you're not eating of Jesus, you're not going to find the way. You're not going to make it to God. You're not going to get your mansion. You're not going to get your book in the key, get your name in the book of life. And also, if you don't work, that means you haven't sown. And that's even in the physical. You can't reap what you don't sow. So how will you have any harvest to reap, spiritually or physically, if you haven't sown? And also, if you don't work, how will you be able to eat of any of the good things mentioned in Romans 8:28, which states, and we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, to those who are called according to the purpose. And if you can't eat of all, that pretty well leaves nothing. So how can we see? So we can see now that if we're not doing the work and we're not making ourselves available to God, and if we're not available to God, we won't receive all that God has made available to us. And if we can't eat of all, eventually you're not going to be eating anything, which means you're going to starve. So now we can see why in the long run, or even in a little run, if you're starving, why it says that the wages of sin are death. Because if you're starving from all that is supposed to bring life into you, all you're going to reap is death. And this makes even more sense because if you fled your whole life from getting your name in the book of life, the only other thing besides life is death. So lastly, if you don't work, and you're not eating, and you're not pursuing after Jesus, and you're not receiving from God, Matthew 6:24 states, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, or money, or wealth. So, with that, I pray that we all seek to be workers. Workers of Jesus' work, workers of God's work, so that we don't be workers of the other one's work. Hopefully this was fruitful to somebody. Hopefully it was an encouragement. Let's continue to do the work that God called us to do, and whatever ministry it may be. And I pray that you all receive this well. Good night.